Jackanoid Paralope is a mission-driven media company. Check out more of our podcasts at jackanoidparalope.com.
Michael.
Nathaniel.
Tradwives. Scary, hot, or both?
What if you find scary to be hot?
From Jackanoid Paralope, this is the Beta Boy Breakdown with Michael and Nathaniel.
So I had problems with getting the structure of this episode, and I talked to you about it a little bit. And the problems I have are as a storyteller and as an artist, I want to make everything flow from beginning to end, and the episodes we've done so far have all kind of had a natural beginning, middle, and end timeline. And this just doesn't. Tradwives are having some type of redefining moment in our culture. Defining or redefining, depending on what kind of tradwife you are. What's your understanding of what a tradwife is?
I don't remember when I first heard it, but I have known at least one person who I would put in this category. I don't know if she self-identifies as a tradwife. So it's basically women being homemakers. I think homeschooling is a part of it, and kind of just taking on this 1950s role that's somewhat subservient and saying this is the way. This is the bright, happy-go-lucky way of living that everybody should be doing.
Okay. So a lot of what you said is spot on. So tradwife is short for traditional wife, and it's a woman who embraces a lifestyle centered on traditional gender roles, which often emphasizes things like you were talking about, like homemaking, child rearing, supporting her husband in whatever her husband's career is. And also, homeschooling is a big part of that. A lot of tradwives believe in homeschooling. So they will educate all of the children in the family, which sometimes can get extremely large. So I came into this episode thinking about tradwives as a story about where they came from and how they've progressed into American culture right now. And I had to talk with you yesterday where I was like, it's not fitting. This is not the right structure. I think this episode on tradwives is going to be formatted and structured more like a profile piece that you might read. Right now, I think there's a little bit of conflict amongst the movement where it's trying to define what a tradwife is.
Oh, interesting.
There are several different kind of archetypes of a tradwife that are jockeying for position and for ownership over this definition of tradwife. I mean, some tradwives would say this has been around forever because this is just, in the past it was known as wifing. This seems to be kind of a conflict amongst these people about what it is.
I'm curious, growing up in Tennessee, did you know this term before it became the thing that it is today?
No. This term in this iteration is new to me as well.
Okay.
And I mean, in Tennessee, so we're going to talk about one of the type of archetypes of a tradwife is the fundamentalist tradwife. And I was very familiar with the fundamentalist tradwife here in Southeast Tennessee. We just didn't call them tradwives. We called them fundamentalists. And we knew, what they believed and why they believed it. And they're very easy to spot here in East Tennessee. They're the ones wearing the long jean skirts all the time, even when it's 90 degrees outside.
Okay.
So, I was aware of that. But the term tradwife, I didn't become really familiar with until I finally broke down and got on TikTok, which was probably 2022, 2023. And then I started being aware of this content.
Okay, so I'm interested to hear what these different types are and everything.
Yeah, so, I mean, the definition I gave was as broad and as general as possible because those beliefs are held by all tradwives. But the primary purpose of a tradwife is to have, raise, and educate the children of the house. So the wives are in charge of the children and the men are in charge of the house. If you can see, it's a nice hierarchy that's lining up that way. And the other thing that they fervently believe, all of the different tradwives have this belief, is that feminism has not made good on the promises that it's been doing, especially modern feminism. And therefore, the tenets of feminism and feminists should just be abandoned. And we should have a return to traditional values and traditional relationship structures. So that's where I think we have our first intersection with the red-pilled manosphere, is the belief that feminism has not made good on anything it's promised, especially like from the second wave feminists onward. And if everybody remembers, we define the red-pilled manosphere every time, but I want to define it again. Taking the red pill means waking up to the idea that modern feminism has gone too far and that men need to reassert their dominance over culture and over relationship structures. The Tradwife movement intersects right there and in that belief. They both hold that same belief. So you do hear Tradwives espousing many red-pilled values, such as natural hierarchies exist with men at or near the top of them. I mean, certainly they're above the women, but in some of these structures, God and Jesus is placed above men. So men do have accountability in some of these structures to a higher power. But even in those structures where they do, it's very convenient that those higher powers don't physically exist. Those are the divine structures that men conveniently have the duty to report back what they say. They're not actually there to make any decisions or to be held accountable by anything on earth.
So I just want to pause on that for 1 second.
Yeah.
Are you saying that because men are, with this hierarchical structure, it goes women taking care of the kids, men above them taking care of the house and all household decisions, they're reporting upward to Jesus and God or whatever deity, I imagine it's mostly Christianity. And they, although albeit a far sect of it, they are conveying God's will back to the wife, and that is the basis of the decisions they're making?
Yes. So what I'm saying is, in those fundamentalist structures, theoretically what you have going on is a man who is in charge of the household, but everybody that the man is held accountable to conveniently doesn't exist on the planet Earth. So while they would say that they are being led by God to lead this household, in reality, what that looks like is the exact same thing as other red-pilled manosphere thinkers that aren't religious, that are saying men are at the top of the hierarchy and we're to lead women just because that's naturally there. But it's, at the end of the day, it's still all their will onto these women.
Got it.
Authority isn't inherently bad is another of one of the red pill's beliefs that these tradwives also share and tend to espouse. That authority doesn't equal bad. There is good authority and there is bad authority. And so it's okay to have authority and authoritarianism in a relationship as long as it's the good one. And you'll hear that kind of echoed by these tradwives when it says, submit to a husband that you think is good. Find that right husband to submit to, and submission isn't bad. He's a good authority on you. And again, that feminism has betrayed and ruined society. You'll hear that out of almost every tradwife's mouth. And you'll hear that on a lot of the red-pilled manosphere ideas, right? So there are 3 basic archetypes to a tradwife. And they are the fundamentalist tradwife that we talked a little bit about, tradwife as a brand, like a branding exercise, and tradwife in terms of an aesthetic, especially a sexualized aesthetic. And I want to spend some time on each of those different archetypes to kind of discuss.
I don't even know how to wrap my head around these yet, so I'm looking forward to this.
Yeah, so I want to spend some time going through these archetypes and just kind of presenting these as these are different flavors of tradwives. They mix a little bit too. Each one of these, you can find elements in a different one as well. But again, I want to keep in this episode the idea going that this is a fluid term right now. I don't think this is really fully formed what a tradwife is. So if it starts to get a little oh, okay, there's this and there's this and there's that and there's that, that's kind of where we are right now.
But I really want, if there's a way to map each of these flavors of tradwife to a flavor of ice cream while you talk, that would just be wonderful for me.
I'll let you think of the ice cream while I kind of go through here.
That's
at
fair.
the end of these, we'll get your ice cream take.
Yeah, that wouldn't be too bad. I mean, you've been doing all this research. That's the least I can do for you is be the ice cream guy. All right, so at the end of this episode, that's the hook, is there will be an ice cream flavor for each of these flavors.
Yeah, everybody keep listening because you got to hear what the
hear the ice cream
flavors
Don't
are.
skip ahead either.
So let's talk a little bit about the fundamentalist tradwife. And like the perfect avatar for a fundamentalist tradwife is Michelle Duggar. If you remember Michelle Duggar at all. Do you, Nathaniel?
I went back and watched a little bit of the Duggar family based on our conversations. So that is
Did you really? That's awesome.
Yeah, that is a brave woman. Say what we will about all the things. That is not an easy life she has had.
Yeah, so she's famous for being the mother on the TLC show 19 Kids and Counting, which was on from 2008 to 2015. She's an Arkansas family. The fundamentalists, there really are concentrated mostly in the southeastern United States, which is like smack dab where I am in East Tennessee. And we were talking a little bit, Nathaniel, because you were raised in Connecticut, and then now you live in New York City. So you were saying this kind of world was almost invisible to you for your whole life.
The big thing, it wasn't only like this far example of this world, but also just church going was on the decline, I thought, everywhere. And when we kind of compared that trend that I saw with your upbringing, it kind of just highlighted how regional people's different experiences are. So whereas this might feel very far removed from American identity as I picture it, it is very in keeping, basically more or less normal with a vast majority that I am not a part of. Yeah.
So this fundamentalist Christian world is very, very visible here in the southeastern United States and in other areas of the country, and definitely invisible to you if you lived in the Northeast or probably on the coast at all. The show was titled 19 Kids and Counting, and that was on purpose because Michelle Duggar had 19 children with her husband, Jim Bob Duggar, between 1988 and 2009. She also had two miscarriages.
Over the course of 21 years. 21 years.
Well, I was going to say, so she had two miscarriages during that time as well. She was pregnant 21 times in 21 years, which is...
It's astonishing.
I mean, yeah, that's astonishing that her entire identity was as a baby factory. That's what she was doing, was producing children during that time. She was doing that because she's a part of the Quiverful movement. It comes from the Bible. It comes from Psalm 127, verses 3 through 5, which I'm going to read right now. And it's, children are indeed a heritage from the Lord, and the fruit of the womb is his reward. Like arrows in the hand of a warrior, so are children born in one's youth. Blessed is the man whose quiver is full of them. As Christian fundamentalists, they are also biblical literalists. And so they read this and they see, you want to be like a warrior for God, which means you need to have a lot of arrows for God. And arrows are children, which means you need a lot of children.
It's very heroic. It kind of like positions the man as the hero.
Yeah, and it's very militaristic. It's very violent, which is also themes in Christian fundamentalist metaphors. There's a lot of talk of raising an army for God, right? And being a weapon for God, which is kind of scary. But to them, they see these biblical verses and they take them literally. And so what they see here is have as many children as possible. And the more children that you have, it means the more favored you are by God, right? This fits in really well with the fundamentalist Christian belief, not necessarily belief, but their what they call the Joshua generation, which we talked a little bit about in one of our phone calls.
Yeah, I actually didn't know this term.
You never heard this term before?
No.
So if you've seen the Amazon Prime documentary, Shiny Happy People, the first season where they talk about the Duggars, they talk about the Joshua generation a little bit. And what the Joshua generation is it is an active work towards dominionism. And dominionism is the belief that the government should be populated with and run by and espouse Christian fundamentalist views.
There's a random connection here. Weren't Dominion voting systems the thing Trump was railing against?
LOL. That's really funny. That is definitely a connection your mind is making, but it is funny. But so the Joshua generation is about dominionism, which is raising a youth generation to be elected and to be very politically active and to make sure that they get in the positions of power that are needed in order to enact a Christian fundamentalist agenda in politics in America. And it comes from Joshua was the person in the Bible who led the Israelites into Israel. Moses died on the way there, and Joshua actually led them to God's country. And so they call it the Joshua generation, which is the millennial generation of Christian fundamentalists. And so when you see these highly Christian fundamentalist thinkers and leaders in politics right now, in elected positions and as activists on the political right, those are the ones who were raised specifically to be politically active and bring America into a time where Christian fundamentalism is the law of the land. So Michelle Duggar, she has her show, right? This show is insanely popular amongst everyone. It is the first show that really highlights Christian fundamentalists. It gets them into mainstream culture. People learn about them, right? People see their lifestyle, which is always presented in like a happy and a calm and a serene type of way. And so that's the impression you get about Christian fundamentalists. Since the show, there are reports from a lot of the children that Jim Bob was very controlling behind the scenes, that he never paid any of the children, even the ones that were above 18 at the time, for their work on the show, because all the money was taken and funneled back into promoting this fundamentalist Christian lifestyle rather than, paid labor for people.
Is that because he considered this show to be kind of an act of service to spread the faith?
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
So in evangelical Christianity and Christian fundamentalism, there is a strong idea of ministry, which means that you need to actively be trying to recruit people into the church and for Jesus. It's part of their religion that they have to be doing that. That shows up in a lot of different ways and a lot of different people. Ministering might be going out on the side of the street corner and handing out Bibles. That could be one way of it. Or it could be having a show on TLC where you get to project Christian fundamentalists as happy, serene, fun people to be around, like non-threatening, in order to get them interested in Christian fundamentalism and recruit their souls for God. So it can take many different forms, but yeah, it fits into that idea of ministry where they are actively going out and trying to recruit people.
Was Michelle Duggar someone who identified as a tradwife?
I don't know if she has ever said like the words, "I am a tradwife," but the Christian fundamentalist version of a tradwife is her, right? Someone who is in the home, homeschooling the children, doing all of the domestic labor of the house, and completely in charge that way. And then also completely subservient to her husband. So she exemplifies that. She might not use that term because, especially amongst Christian fundamentalists, is that term, they just kind of go, well, tradwives are wives.
She's walking the walk without talking the talk, it sounds like.
No, I think that she would think that what she is doing just is God's will and is a biblical will, and therefore she's just doing what should always be followed.
Well, how would walking the walk kind of strike you as not that? It's kind of a moot point.
I don't know.
It doesn't really matter.
Yeah, I think it's a distinction. In my mind, it's a distinction without a difference, and it doesn't fucking matter.
All right, let's move on.
But anyway. So with the Duggars, of course, what has happened? Like I said, since the show has come out, in 2015, Joshua Duggar, who's the eldest child of the Duggars, was found to have molested several of his sisters. And Jim Bob and Michelle both knew about it at the time and covered it up so that Josh would get married and no harm would come to him. So in 2015, this was found out and Joshua was taken off the show. Some of the Duggars had to come out and kind of relive their trauma now because they're public figures, so everybody wants to know about them. So they had to have interviews and reliving their trauma. And it has been like a big sore spot in their family for a long time. And again, just go watch Shiny Happy People season 1 and you'll see like how badly it's affected their life. Also in 2015, Joshua Duggar was found out. Do you remember that Ashley Madison leak, like in the mid 2010s and 2015?
That was the app where married men find people to sleep with.
Yeah, anybody who's married could find somebody else to sleep with and have an affair with. And somebody hacked their records and exposed all the men and all the women who were on that site, like put all their information, including email addresses out there. Well, Joshua Duggar's information was a part of that leak. So he was found to have an account on that site, which is just kind of an irony because he's Christian fundamentalist and espouses a life that is completely not allowed. And later on in 2021, Joshua Duggar was arrested because he possessed child pornography on his computer. And in 2022, he was sentenced to 12 years in federal prison. So I don't want to present the picture that every Christian fundamentalist's family has this kind of stuff going on. However, Christian fundamentalists oftentimes do have a darker side than what they present, which is kind of how you can look at them as a cult, like start to get into that kind of thing. Is Christian fundamentalism a cult or not? And this is something that happens in cults all the time, where they have to present one picture on the outside and on the inside, something much darker is happening.
This could be something we dig into in a future episode, but I'm all of a sudden curious, how would we even define a cult these days?
Oh, it's hard. I don't want to say that Christian fundamentalism is a cult. I want to say that it contains a lot of cult-like elements, and other people can debate whether that makes it a cult or not. I want to go through Christian fundamentalism a little bit in terms of how they've risen in our culture. So Christian fundamentalism has strong roots in the Institute of Basic Life Principles. Shorthand, it's called the IBLP. And it's a non-denominational fundamentalist organization. It was established by a man named Bill Gothard in 1961. And Bill Gothard is still alive today. He got thrown out of the church. Spoiler alert, he got thrown out of the church in 2014 over sexual abuse scandals. So again, theme with this kind of Christian fundamentalist stuff. But he's still alive. He still exists. He's just not part of this organization anymore. He really rose up in the 70s and 80s with this strict kind of teaching and code that he would sell to fundamentalist churches. So Bill Gothard didn't necessarily have a church himself. What he did is he went to these other churches and he said, hey, here is how you should live as a fundamentalist Christian.
There's one thing that I'm seeing emerge as kind of a thematic thing here, which is there's two camps of maybe people. There's those who appreciate a structure and a almost a playbook for explaining every last question they might come across. And then there's those who might opt for free will and autonomy. And as we kind of get more into the Tradwife space, I'm interested to see this play out as to how much just having your decisions taken away from you and just playing a role that's known, that's something to be expected, if there's a commonality of appeal to just like filling this role and not having to think about things.
I think you're spot on with recognizing that theme, because that is totally there. When authoritarianism can be packaged up and resold to you as faith or as something that is good, as if it can siren call you back to it. You know, if it can say, this is good, this is great, you should come this way, you really want this authority, this is good authority. And if it can make that look appealing to you, well, that's way preferable than to come and take you and make you be in this structure, right? So I think Bill Gothard is really good at this. And I think the modern tradwife movement is really great at that. And you'll notice that theme coming up as we go more and more into this. So Bill Gothard, his main beliefs that he said were fundamentalist beliefs and fundamentalists should do were things that you'd exactly think they were. It's a patriarchal family structure, right? So the husbands are the spiritual leaders and the heads of the household. There are strict gender roles in this, and it's an idea in religion called complementarianism. So what that means is that men and women were created to complement each other, that each are different and good at their own things, and that and that is assigned to them based off the genitals they have when they were born, right? Whatever genitals you have, you fit into these nice, neat little boxes, and that's exactly what you should be looking to fulfill, because that is what God has given you, right? So if you were a man and you were born with a penis, it means you are a leader and you are the one to make decisions. And if you were born with a vagina, well, that means that you need to follow and you need to be more like the home, right? And so it's very strict. It's very, very binary in that way. Bill Gothard also preached against large families and homeschooling. Don't put your kids in public schools, because then they are going to be they're going to have secular influences on their life, right? And another belief with Christian fundamentalism is separatism. So it means like separating yourself from secular culture, and so that you're not influenced by the devil. Well, what that also has the added benefit of doing is, if you separate from culture, that means you are only going to be exposed to art and to society and to cultures that are approved by Bill Gothard. So you are bringing yourself into less and less things that can influence you. You're only absorbing this kind of Bill Gothard approved material. So it, maybe Bill Gothard's intention wasn't to create a totalitarian North Korea-like state, but that's what he fucking did. And it's also a spectrum. I don't want to ever say that this is binary, like you are or you aren't. People fell along a spectrum, but like what Bill Gothard wanted was a completely separate Christian world where he could control everything, right?
Just to get a baseline understanding as to the culture that was allowed in, like would the band Creed be on there? Is it too secular?
No. Dude, this is a podcast into and of itself. So it's not all, Bill Gothard wasn't the only voice in this space, but there was a lot of Christian separatist music and art that I'm just thinking about as an elder millennial, like flooded through the 90s, especially here in the Southeast. And the band DC Talk is the one that you can go to like 100%. They broke through into secular culture with the song Jesus Freak for like half a second. And there are great podcasts that you can listen to that talk about like Christian art in the 90s and like the completely separate kind of world that was going on with Christian bands and Christian music versus secular music. But the only thing I want to bring up in this podcast is that those two spaces existed. You lived in America, but not in America during that time, if that makes sense.
I got you.
So Bill Gothard, his structure, his hierarchy was set up in what he called the umbrellas of authority. And it starts with just big umbrellas. And so the biggest umbrella is Jesus Christ, right? And he's the one that if you're under his umbrella, then you will be spiritually protected, right? You're not going to get wet in the rain because you're under his umbrella. Beneath that umbrella is the husband, and beneath that umbrella is the wife, and beneath that umbrella are the children. And as long as, wherever you are, if you're a child, as long as you stay under your mother's umbrella of authority, you'll be safe. And as long as the wife stays under the husband's umbrella, she'll be safe. And it also, in systems where there is authority and no accountability, that's where we know abuse can happen. Like with these authoritarian systems, it seems to be that the burden for keeping the system working the way it's intended is placed on the submissive person. So like the burden for the household, like running well and running smooth, is often placed on the wife, even though the husband is the leader of it, right? And so it's always seems to be placed on the submissive person, when if anywhere else in your life, if you go to your professional life, if your department manager, like the success of the department that you're in at work is placed on the manager of that department, which is where it should be. It's not placed on the employees. The buck stops with your manager. But this is completely different. And they justify, the Tradwives justify submitting to this because they say, you're going to pick your husband, you're going to make sure he's godly. But what tends to happen is, if you're getting married at 19, how do you know anything about another person,
and
when
how
you're
does
19?
that person know anything about themselves at that age?
Yeah, exactly. And there are fundamentalists, ex-fundamentalists who are now coming out, who are writing books and sharing their stories about just how getting into this trad wife and trad existence led to abuse in their life. Tia Levings is a great person. She has a lot of books out, and she has a lot of podcast interviews where she talks about getting out of this lifestyle. And just go listen to some of her stories if you want to see how bad this can get. And the thing about the fundamentalist trad wife, fundamentalists don't like to show the bad side. They only like to show the happy, sunny, good side. They are not presenting a picture that is true. They are lying to you by omission. You never go into this with eyes wide open. And so that's the end of that section. Thoughts, questions, learnings from that archetype of a trad wife?
I think it's more of a bridge question to the next types, which is, are all Tradwives spiritual in the way, or religious rather, in the way that that first section is? Is it a commonality across them, or is it more secular and just lifestyle based?
Tradwives right now seem to be religious. There's no example of a secular tradwife that I can think of that has any significant influence on how this space is being defined. I think that this space, whatever definition kind of these people morph into, religion, it seems like it's going to be a big part of it. Now, is it going to be as fundamentalist and as conservative and as like spiritually rigid as the fundamentalist tradwife is? I don't know. But faith and Christianity are definitely a part of all different tradwives. It's just the dial is turned up or down depending on the individual tradwife. Does that make sense?
It does. I wonder if there's a caveat, or, the place where my thought went to when you were saying that was that phrase you used, the ones who are defining this space all seem to have an overtone of religion. The ones who don't have millions of followers, thousands of followers, however big this number gets for these folks, I'd actually be curious to know how common thousands or millions of followers are. But the ones who are just receiving the information and choosing to adopt this life, maybe turning a blind eye to the religion side of it in favor of the lifestyle part of it, but that's impossible to know because the loudest voices define the conversation.
Well, so you're kind of teeing me up for the interview. So I did an interview with a tradwife for this episode, just kind of on background, because I was curious to know like how the tradwife on the street was absorbing this information that's coming at them. And so I'll get to her a little bit later, but to answer your question now, yeah, she definitely identified in the evangelical religious space. So she definitely did that. But in terms of like how close she is to Michelle Duggar, I put her on the complete opposite side of that like avatar. So it's not so much that like they're trying to replicate themselves. I think that they're just trying to get these kind of ideas into the culture to make them acceptable, right? So again, just the idea that feminism is ruining America and it has taken away more from women than it has given is now reflected in so many different areas of the manosphere and of culture and of politics that like once you kind of get into that step, well, then the next step is easier to accept, which is you should just return home women. You should forfeit your right to, all of these things that feminism has gained you, and you should just give those up because like that's the way it should be. That's the way it's worked for so long, right? But we'll get to that a little bit here in this next version of a Tradwife that I kind of want to present to everybody, which is Tradwife the brand, right? And I even subtitled it The Girl Boss Reimagined. So Tradwife the brand, I want to offer like the perfect archetype for this seems to be Ballerina Farm. Ballerina Farm is like if Little House on the Prairie met like glamping, met cottagecore, like fantasy kind of thing. So she's Ballerina Farm that's a handle for her name. She's Hannah Nealman, and she has a homestead in Utah with her husband, Daniel Nealman, who has the handle The Hog Father, which is the fucking best handle I've ever heard in my life. I love that handle. It's so good. He also happens to be a billionaire and is heir to the JetBlue fortune. So his father started JetBlue. So this life that he has constructed for himself out in Utah, which like they live on a farm with mountains in the background, and there's all kinds of animals running around, and she like mills her own flour and does all of these kind of things while wearing like the perfect prairie home, like prairie dress and cowboy boots. Anyway, that's kind of the vibe that she gives off in this life. And she has 10 million followers on Instagram and on TikTok. So a little bit about her. If you have not heard of her, she is a former ballerina, which is why she uses the handle Ballerina Farm. And she was a Juilliard trained ballerina. So lady was good at what she did. Like if you know Juilliard, that is the best art school college in America.
How old is she? She's millennial, you said?
She's in her 30s. I had her birthday written down, and I literally deleted it because I was like, who cares about her birthday? So
I literally just passed it. That's hilarious.
I was like, who cares? But she's in her 30s, so she actually is a little bit older than some of these Tradwives that you see. Most of them are in their early 20s. But she's a little bit older. She's a Juilliard trained dancer, and she graduated from Juilliard and married the Hog Father, married Daniel, and they have they both given interviews where they say this life was consciously created, right? They decided to do this type of life where she was in charge completely of all of the home and all the children and raising the children and homeschooling the children, and he was out doing Hog Father things, whatever the Hog Father does.
Before we get too far down the family thing, they have a wonderful meet cute that I was stunned by in your outline, and I don't know if you're planning to get there. But
I'm getting there.
Okay.
Oh yeah. How she met her husband. Yeah, we're getting there. But I just want to paint the picture that her household has 8 children between the ages of 12 and 6 months. She just had a child. She's in the Church of Latter-day Saints, which Mormons, if you know anything about them on social media, they are like on point with branding. Like all of the mommy blog space and this kind of pioneer Tradwife homestead space is like dominated by a lot of Mormons.
Was she Mormon before she went to Juilliard?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. She describes herself as not the weird kind of Mormon. You know, she says she's not like full on into her Mormon beliefs the way that like a fundamentalist Christian would say that they are into their Christianity, right? What's that joke? It's like, how do you know somebody's vegan? And it's like, because they'll tell you. It's like, how do you know somebody's a fundamentalist Christian? It's because they'll tell you, right? Mormons, on the other hand, tend to downplay like exactly their Mormonism. And I in terms of like publicly and from different interviews with like studying like this concept where Mormons are like really good with branding online, where like Mormons are into the show don't tell type of like evangelism, where they show you their lifestyle and how good it is and that kind of stuff. They don't talk about it too much. So I only say that to say Hannah says she's not kind of into the Mormon church, like not deep into it. However, she also wouldn't say that from what I know about Mormons and their branding. So we don't really know necessarily how deep she is into her religion, but it definitely is present. Like, you know that about her. You mentioned the meet cute between her and the Hog Father. So what the story was in an article, like the controversial article that came out about her in 2024 was in the Times of London, where they wanted to do a profile on Hannah. And so the reporter traveled to her ranch in Utah and decided to try to interview her. Well, he noted in the profile quite heavily that he could never get Hannah alone. Like, she was always surrounded either by her children or by her like social media crew, her business like people, or the Cogfather. So she was constantly being bombarded with like needs. Like, she was in that typical type of woman archetype where like they are just givers and they are constantly taking care of somebody. That was Hannah. He could never get her alone. And then he also noted several things. The first of which was how she met her husband. Was she had met him before and did not express interest in him. And while Daniel's side is that Daniel saw her and immediately wanted to marry her. And she kept showing her disinterest, not like didn't like him, but just didn't like him in that way, like definitely friend zoned him. So Daniel, because he has JetBlue connections, found out when Hannah was flying from New York City back to Salt Lake City for a break in Juilliard or whatever. And beep, bop, boop went in the computer and like got the seat next to Hannah on that flight. So he found Hannah's flight, found out where Hannah was sitting, moved things around so that he could sit next to her. And then they had a 5-hour long date back to Salt Lake City, which it must have been great for Hannah. Like I guess big risk, big reward. But that sounds like so creepy in the weirdest way. If somebody did that to me, I would definitely run the other way. But Hannah really liked it, apparently. And the two dated for a month. And 2 months after that, they got married. So from flight to Salt Lake City to marriage was 3 months. She didn't want to go there. And then he got her in to be married in 3 months. It just seems interesting. A quote from that article that talks about, you know, after they got married and when they lived. So this starts off with this is a quote from Neilman herself. So she says, "Our first few years of marriage were really hard. We sacrificed a lot," she says. "What kind of sacrifices?" I ask her. "Well, I gave up dance, which was hard. Daniel wanted to live in the great western wilds, so they did. He wanted to farm, so they do. He likes date nights once a week, so they go. They have a babysitter on those evenings," which Daniel doesn't allow babysitting in the house at all. Hannah has to watch the children all the time. But on this night, they get a babysitter. "He didn't want nannies in the house, so there aren't any. The only space earmarked to be Neilman's own, a small barn she wanted to convert into a ballet studio, ended up becoming the kids' schoolroom." So the picture this reporter is painting is one in which this woman had her own autonomy and her own agency and her own hopes and dreams, and has given all of those up in order to be Daniel's perfect wife. Of course, the Neilmans have come out after this article came out and said this is total bullshit. Like, that Hannah wants all these things and yada, 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 and this guy got it wrong. So we have to say that. But this picture that Hannah just has slowly given up herself to be what this man wants her to be is not wrong either. Like, it definitely seems that way. All in service of this brand that she has created. So Hannah Neilman, in a lot of her videos, is just one glorified infomercial for a product that she's selling. Like she's giving this lifestyle and she's showing this lifestyle. And at the end of her video, or even at the beginning of her video, sometimes she's like, "Oh, I milled my own flour today. You can buy it at our website." Like, she's not traditional in the sense that some trad wives are, where they, you know, the husband is the one that goes out and has to have the business. Like, she definitely makes a lot of effing money with 10 million followers and being able to sell her own stuff and her own lifestyle. So I want to stress that, like, Hannah Neilman is an entrepreneur more than anything. And so it's different. It's a different flavor of Tradwifery than the fundamentalist Christian, because the fundamentalist Christian will look at this as ministry and something to do like for Jesus, while definitely Hannah Nealman is giving off this is a business. Like, I'm running a business. I'm selling you things. At the end of the day, I'm trying to move units of my flour. I'm not trying to get you for Jesus. At least it's not overt in that way. So I want to bring in the idea here of the girl boss, which was an archetype for like millennial feminism, like back in 2000 and I'm going to say 2014 because I don't have a better date, but it's somewhere around there.
There's a quick interjection I'm going to give you.
Yeah.
Post-election in 2024. So I live in Brooklyn, like center of the center, like Bushwick. And I was walking around and there's been a bit of a change in the political makeup around where I live. And it never appeared more apparent to me than when I walked past some posters of the Kardashians and it basically used some foul language to describe girl boss, like girl boss is dead or something like that. And it was like, this is in Bushwick. Bushwick. Anyway, go on.
So yeah, well, I think you're right to call out on there that like the girl boss was at its height at this time, and the tradwife movement in a lot of ways is the reaction to the girl boss. And so the girl boss as a concept was, like I said, like peak millennial feminism. And the critique that I have of it is definitely that it was like too white. It was too upper middle class. It was too college educated, elitist. It didn't care enough about, most women, real women in the working class or women of color or any kind of diversity. Like, it was solely focused on the image of a woman and what that was, and presenting the image of a woman as like professional, white, skinny. I don't know why I want to say brunette, but I feel brunette, like that type of woman that can achieve professionally and really, really, really care about like that kind of thing. The problem was that didn't focus on the domestic side of life, where the millennial girl boss would go out and kick ass in the workplace, and then she'd go home and she would do all of the housework and all of the cooking and all of the cleaning, because women with feminism got access to the professional marketplace. But there was never a renegotiation domestically. I'm going to make that word up.
While you're creating words, I'm going to push back a little bit. I think that that's the idea that the millennial woman inherently handled all household duties while also having a career. I think that's a broad brush to paint with. I think everybody experienced something different.
Oh, everybody experienced something different. I'm not. Yeah. I'm not saying that this didn't play out differently amongst different groups. But what I'm saying is, like, girl boss culture was all about how women are being presented in the media, and then the reality was actually a lot different. I feel like women, I feel like most women, in fact, I'll even say that, would say that one really freaking annoying and unfair thing about being a woman is that now you're expected to achieve professionally and still be a mother and a domestic goddess. Like you're supposed to be the barefoot Contessa 1 minute, and you're supposed to be like fucking just Kim Kardashian or some professional amazing woman the next. And the idea of tradwives, the idea that tradwives present is that, hey, just do half of that work. In some ways, it feels like you only have to do half the work. Just do all the domestic stuff, which in a lot of cases is the fun stuff. Like making sourdough and having a garden and being with your children all the time is the fun stuff that you want to do. So isn't it great to just focus on that stuff and not have to worry about the professional?
You just made me want to be a tradwife. Like, that sounds lovely.
Well, yeah, exactly. And that's what I brought it up earlier. The idea that this is like a siren song, right? This is like calling you back to your roots and calling you back to what it is to be a woman, heavy quotation marks on all of that. So like that, the rejection of that girl boss avatar, I feel like is important in this tradwife movement. However, Hannah Nealman presents an interesting point in this, which is the entrepreneurial spirit of the tradwife and of the girl boss are the same. They exist in both avatars right there. Like Hannah Nealman is an entrepreneur. She's a business owner. She's definitely achieving highly professionally. And she has found a way to monetize the domestic side, which traditionally has not ever really had any value in the market, right? All of the domestic tasks have had no quote unquote market value for the longest time, yet she is monetizing that. And I just want to call that out as like really fucking cool. And that's like the part of Tradwife that I like respect, where I'm like, oh, now you're making money off of something that traditionally has never made money before, like you go girl kind of thing. However, what's coming along with that is, so the ideal I put down for like a girl boss is like I said Kim Kardashian earlier, where it was like, okay, Kim Kardashian is making this content. Kim Kardashian is having these brands, but the Kardashians were very forward in like their presentation of like, no, I'm a business person. I'm doing this to make money. I am the main character in this story. Like they have a very good agency in their own story. Hannah Nealman, like, and this is just my opinion, but like when the Hogfather comes into Hannah Nealman content, like there's a very big feeling that like what I'm watching with the ballerina farm is like the spin-off series to what the actual show is. The Hogfather is the show, and he's making a guest appearance in my ballerina farm life that I've created. But this is this fun spin-off to his story. So there's a little bit of sacrificing like agency a little bit from Hannah, and knowing that like, hey, it's great that my spin-off is doing well. He is the person that we're always showing. Whether like, well, in Kardashian content, it was very forward that like, hey, this is my story and everybody else are characters in it. That is a subtle artistic point, but I think valid to mention in this, where it's like there's still the entrepreneurship, but it's sacrificing a little bit of the agency in your own story. And like I said, completely my own opinion. I can't find anybody else evidence or saying this, but I just feel like that's interesting.
Do we feel like she is the one driving this content, or is she a unwitting star in it?
On some level, she wants it. She obviously wants it, right? She's choosing this lifestyle.
It could be the way that she connects to people because she's like isolated otherwise, I suppose. Like this is her way of engaging with the world.
I don't want to paint the... So for the longest time in Trump 1.0, there was this like Democrat talking point that like Melania was there like against her will. It was like blink twice, Melania. And I was always of the mind that like Melania made this choice. She made this choice to marry this man. She knows who this man is. She knows that she is like, she knows the life she's signing up for. She's like evil too. You know, was always my kind of thing. Like let's not assume that this woman is against her will. No, I'm assuming that Hannah like wants this. She knew this. She wanted this. Maybe she also wanted to be a ballerina at some point in time, but she has chosen to sacrifice those things for a greater narrative, which seems to serve the man and not her. But she made that choice. But the other point I want to make with this Tradwife the brand is, like with the girl boss, the critique is that it's a very narrow window for success, right? It was very white. It was very professional. It was very, college educated. That was the window and the box that you had to fit yourself into. And surprise, surprise, 99.99% of people can't fit into that box. We have unrealistic standards for women in our society all over the place. And this was the millennial feminist flavor of an unrealistic standard to put onto a woman. Well, we took that narrow window and we kept it just as narrow, and we just shifted it over to the Hannah Nealman aesthetic. So cottagecore, prairie fantasy, a thin, blonde, attractive woman who sells, flour on the side or whatever. So we have just as narrow of a window, but we've moved where the window is. So it's not necessarily a reaction to the girl boss to something that works. Just because the girl boss aesthetic didn't work and was bad doesn't mean that this aesthetic will work and is good. Like, they can both be bad. And also, the thing to call out with Hannah Nealman is the fact that she's married to a billionaire. Like, this lifestyle she has constructed for herself feels poor, but is super rich. Like, 99.9999% of women can never do this because they do not have the money to do this. And there is a long history of rich people in this country trying to cosplay as poor people and reflect back to poor people the romanticized experience of their life that they can never have. And I feel like that's the evil thing in what she's doing. Like, that's the vile thing, is presenting a lifestyle that poor people wish that they could achieve. And, oh, if I could own a little bit of her through purchasing her products, then I will. And she's co-opting those emotions and she's making money off of it. And that gives me the ick. So, like, the fact that I admire the effort and I admire what she's doing, I get the ick from it too.
Mm-hmm. Your ick is valid. I'll reflect that back to you.
Okay, good. So that's Tradwife, the branding exercise, or the brand, right? The reaction to girl boss culture.
I've already written down 2 flavors. Let's find out what the third one is.
Oh, okay, good. The next one is Tradwife, the aesthetic, right? So how it looks, the visual aspect of it. Subtitle, The Patriarchal Thirst Trap. So this is where Tradwives intersect with sexuality in...
This is where scary meets hot.
Interesting ways. Yeah, this is where scary meets hot. So the avatar, or the archetype I have for this Tradwife is Esty Williams.
That's the one you
Esty
just
Williams.
sent me.
That's the one I made you watch just before we recorded because I wanted you to get an idea of who she is. She has considerably less followers than Ballerina Farm. She's only in the hundreds of thousands on Instagram and TikTok, so she's not as popular in terms of, like, you know, people subscribers. However, whenever they're in the news, whenever Tradwives are in the news or making waves, like, she seems to have her hand in a lot of different, like, high media profile spaces. Like, she had a Dr. Phil interview. She's in a lot of profile pieces when people think of Tradwives. And I think there's reasons for that, but I just want to call that out, that, like, she is in the culture even though she has significantly way less followers. So,
what are the reasons that she's the one people draw on?
Her tits. It's not. That's what I think. Like, I was going to ask you what you thought about her content and her aesthetic, but that's the answer, I think. But so, what did you think about her content? What did you think about her aesthetic?
It was interesting because it's at once highly sexualized and also very maternal. So it just kind of, it taps into, like, this, I can see why people who are lonely gravitate toward it. You know,
why is that?
Because it feels like someone's going to take care of you.
Yeah. So the video I sent you, I mean, she's dressed in every video.
Great style. She's not only, like, attractive, like, the style is fucking on point.
Yeah, it's Marilyn Monroe is the first thing I think of. Like, she's blonde, she has a short kind of bobby hair, curly. She speaks in a very breathy voice the entire time, which I feel like is a concept borrowed from fundamentalist Christianity called fundy baby voice, which is like a very breathy female voice that is somewhat infantilized and sexualized. And at the other point...
Did baby voice come from fundamentalism? Because I remember when that was, like, a whole thing that blew up.
No, baby voice is a thing with women. Well, infantilization is a thing with women, right? Society reinforces the idea that a childlike woman is attractive. And so women reflect that back in their voice by sounding way younger than they are. And then they get attraction and attention from men for that. So they keep doing it. very specifically, fundy baby voice is fundamentalist baby voice. And in that culture, it is reflected back to women to seem very, very, very young, innocent, childlike with a breathy voice. And if they ever have to speak, it is very meek. It is very soft. It is very childlike. It is very calming. It is very ASMR type of voice. And if you're political, a couple of years ago, the Republicans had an answer to one of Biden's State of the Unions done by an Alabama congressman. An Alabama senator named Katie Britt. And there's a lot of stories about her voice and just like how weird it was. And she has fundy baby voice. So if anybody's wondering what I'm talking about, since it's a podcast, go watch Katie Britt's response to Biden's State of the Union and you'll hear it. Michelle Duggar has it too. Michelle Duggar has it real bad. So if you know Michelle Duggar's voice, like you'll know that too. So anyway, Estee's got that as well. And it's kind of like a combination of that with Marilyn Monroe. And she wears floral dresses that are like, they look very tailored, very nice. They fit her very well in a very tight kind of way. Like it shows off her figure very well and like are very floral 1950s, 1960s housewife themed. And that's how she looks in all her videos.
And in the video that you sent me, it's shot from like, I imagine her iPhone. So the video you sent me is her making her husband's lunch or something, like a pasta salad.
She makes a lot of videos making her husband's lunch. Yeah.
There you go. Her man's lunch, I think, is what the description said. And
sure.
The iPhone was positioned, I assume, on the countertop looking up, but it also had this kind of like, what I like whenever I shoot video, like if it's that shot from below, I call it the hero shot, basically, because it makes somebody look like larger than life. And I imagine like she's probably short or something like that based on like, I don't know, my assumptions. But
I'll tell you, I might be able to help you here. It's at boob level. The camera, that's the first thing I noticed, like the camera was put at boob level. So like where you're naturally going to look on the phone, like where the camera is right on her chest, which is quite ample.
Center screen. It's definitely quite ample.
And I'm like, that is not a coincidence. It can't be, because that's what all her videos are. And even at one point, so she's taking out all the vegetables. She's like opening the cans of food. She's making tuna salad. So she's like doing all that stuff. And she's putting all the products she's doing right on the same level as her boobs. And even at one point, she has a stalk of celery that she's going to chop up. And she takes the celery and she puts it right on her body, right below her boobs, and like pushes them up a little bit.
She calls it a rib. She calls it a rib of celery.
Yeah, rib of celery. And she puts it right there. And I only bring all this up to say, like, this is on purpose. This is a sexualized woman who is sexualizing herself for her videos. So there's a flavor of Tradwife that is definitely an aspirational type of video for women. And I would call Ballerina Farm in that. And there's a flavor of Tradwife that is, this is for the men. Like these videos are fantasy for the men, and having this type of woman who is submissive, who is highly sexualized, and is always looking at like the peak of her sexuality. She is that way. And so that is a fantasy and a performance for men rather than a fantasy and a performance for women. And so that's why I think she's on TV. That's why I think she's in the news. I mean, it's not more simple than that sometimes.
Because that's what men want to program, basically. It will appeal to other men.
Yeah. This is performance for men. And she espouses the Tradwife beliefs. Of course, she talks about being subservient to her man, that she makes her man's lunch all the time. And like the recipes. So Ballerina Farm does a lot of cooking videos, and she's got an amazing stove that she uses that's like a Pioneer stove. And it's like her cooking for her family, and it's like food porn. Right? It's like she is making the best food possible. So she's hitting the algorithm on those types of videos too, for people who are just watching cooking videos. I don't know if you have cooking videos in your feed. Like my algorithm is full of cooking videos, and it's mostly like high-end cooking videos, right? Like people are just making like the most foodie shit possible. And I want to know that. I want to see that, right? And then you get to Esty Williams and she's making tuna salad for her man, and it is the worst tuna salad. I'm like, that is gross tuna salad. It is. It's gross. It's so mid. She's opening up cans of tuna and like putting pasta in it. So it's like, it's not cooking. Like she's doing the same things that like Hannah Nealman is doing because the algorithm tells her to, but I'm not there for the cooking content.
Correct.
So that's why I put Esty in like that. It's a different category. Like it's where Tradwifery meets fetish content, meets kink. But it'll never say it. It can't say it, right? It would mean you couldn't watch it if you were a trad husband. That would be inappropriate. But it rides that line of appropriate and inappropriate, and it paints this picture that to be a trad wife also means that you have to be hypersexualized by men. You have to be aspirational for women, and you got to be hypersexualized by men.
This seems more exhausting than being a girl boss.
This seems to be, if millennial feminism seemed exhausting to women, this also seems exhausting to women. But if you go the trad way, what you're not getting is Social Security, 401k match, health insurance, like all those things that you get in the professional space, you are not getting in this trad wife space. Whoa. But it is just as exhausting.
You kind of just hit on something that made me pause for a second. Is trad wife, is this movement part of a larger effort to get women out of the workforce?
That's too hard for me to answer. Let me try, since it's a podcast. I think the fundamentalists, there's that element into it, right? Because if you're going to be a biblical woman, that means staying at home. That's just very clearly, that means staying at home. But if you're not in a religious space, like a lot of women in the red-pilled manosphere, outside of this trad wife stuff, you can find a lot of women who are red-pilled, who espouse red-pilled views and ideas. And what I hear from them very much is women need to be in the professional workspace. Yeah, it's okay to choose tradwifery, just like it is okay to choose being a girl boss. Those are two choices.
Yeah. I mean, I know I tend to lean toward the conspiracy mindset more than you do, and you always are very good about reining me back. It's just that...
Yeah, I mean, but the thing is, like, you're not wrong to think or call it a conspiracy, because it does seem to act and behave like a conspiracy in a lot of ways. And the results that it's producing are like
really,
I always say, like religion, religion isn't trying to mind control people necessarily. However, if you wanted to mind control people, religion seems like a very good way to do it. And that's different.
The way of thinking that you brought to that kind of echoed what I was thinking of, which is it's not about looking kind of like from the ground up and being like, look at all these swirling masses that are trying to control like society and our minds and all these things. What I go to is, what's the benefit? What's the profit for the folks that seem to be in power? What would help them further solidify that power and further disenfranchise people they want to control? And what are some really effective means to do that? And then I take stock of what's going on, including this, and be like, it seems like a pretty effective way to get women out of the workforce, and there are benefits to doing so. So like that was where the question came from.
Yeah, and you see even like J.D. Vance reflecting back some of these values, and a lot of people in MAGA reflecting back these values, that, you know, the true calling for a woman is to be a mother and an educator of children. And then when you're a grandmother, you're called even more to, you know, help the woman be the mother of a household. So there's definitely this thing. It's like your entire existence as a woman is to be servient in a domestic space, and that's all. And it really is good if like that's a woman's choice. there is like nothing wrong with wanting that to be your life. But like what's wrong is when there is no way else for you to have a life beyond that, right? And so a lot of these women, if they're getting called back rather seductively, like a siren song again, like to this type of lifestyle, what they're not getting from this social media content or from any of these tradwives right now is the other side of it. Like I said, go listen to a Tia Levings interview where she like explains that she escaped barely with her lives because her husband was abusive and was about to go get a gun to shoot them. And she just ran for her life and took 10 years of psychotherapy to get undoctrinated from this type of lifestyle and be able to have her own identity, right? Like it's so hard, and it's so hard to get out of this lifestyle. And when you give submission, what you actually are giving up, like that is not known, that is not told to these women. And many of these women have been indoctrinated since birth to believe that this is the way that they should exist, right? So it's bait and switch. It's unfair to expect women to give this and to tell them this is your only purpose, right? It's all of those things are in there, and that's the dangerous part. What's not dangerous is a woman saying, this is what I want. This type of life seems great, and that's what I want to do, and that's what I want to try for. Fucking go for it. But the other side isn't getting told in this content, and they need to know that.
Back to Fundy, sexy baby vibes.
Yeah, so that's Esty Williams. The other one I put in here, she's not very popular, but just to kind of illustrate the point further, is Gwen the Milkmaid, which is just a name that sounds very sexual or hits on a certain fetish level. And Gwen the Milkmaid was a former OnlyFans model, former sex worker who an ASMR porn star who made the switch to making tradwife content. In all her interviews that she does, she espouses to be like converted to Christianity and to Jesus, but then she posts very what is suggestive content for a tradwife. You know what I mean? Like it's not she wears. Yeah. So like in an Esty Williams example, like Esty Williams dresses very conservatively, but also very sexually. So that's what Gwen the Milkmaid does, right? And just to show that like this woman made the switch from one to the other, there must have been also monetization opportunities with these tradwives, right? That there is a market for a sexually suggestive tradwife, just like there is a market for a sexually suggestive anything. And so people who are into making explicit sexual content are jumping over because there is a market opportunity.
It's the new marketplace
with tradwives. Yeah. I mean, there is. I mean, beauty standards switch all the time, right? And so for a certain section of men, this beauty standard is switching this way, and they like that. And there are people who are seeing that and going and taking advantage of that as a market opportunity. And that is totally okay and fine. There's no problem with that. But what it's illustrative of is that this market exists and there is incentive for people to do this. So it is also getting swept up into this, what is a tradwife, right? Is the beauty standards around it. That's the tradwife aesthetic, the thirst trap element of it. So I mentioned earlier that I did do an interview with an honest to God tradwife in the wild, because I felt like, you know, this is the picture that's being presented to us on social media. This is what the algorithm is feeding us. But somebody who identifies as a tradwife, like what is their, like where do they exist in all of this?
What's their world?
Yeah, what's their world? So the lady I interviewed, her name is Courtney. I'm pretty sure she'd be okay with me using her last name, but I'm not going to do it just because I'm not 100% sure. But she's located in Northeast Georgia. I'm in East Tennessee. And she has done several interviews on different tradwife podcasts that I started listening to. So there's a whole podcast world of tradwives out there that are less about analyzing tradwives like we're doing, and more about like tradwives helping tradwives and like giving different tips and tricks about like how to live the lifestyle, both biblically and practically. And one of them called the Traditional Tradwife Podcast. It's actually really, really cool. Again, because it's like an actual tradwife interviewing other actual tradwives. And they interviewed Courtney. And Courtney had a really cool story that I identified with a lot. We're both corporate America dropouts. So we both had, long careers. I had it with operations management in, again, an international coffee company that shall remain nameless. And she had it. She went to college. She got a criminal justice degree, and then she went on to be
criminal justice degree. Wow.
Right, a security manager at like large companies. She mentioned Dick's Sporting Goods, and there were others too. So she was basically like in asset protection. And she was a district manager for that. So she had many different locations under her belt. And then one day decided like, why am I kind of working for this? Like, this is not. Like I keep chasing that money, I keep chasing that dollar, and I want a simpler life. And so she went away from corporate America and is now a homesteader in Northeast Georgia. She's had mild success with it. She was interviewed on Joel Salatin's podcast, which if you are in like the maha or organic food kind of space, you'll know Joel Salatin has been around for a long time. I actually knew who he was from Michael Pollan's book, The Omnivore's Dilemma, like way back when, and I read that, and that he profiles him. And he's got like a libertarian farmer vibes. And that's the best way that I can describe Courtney, is like libertarian farmer. So there was not like a 5-minute span that went by in an interview that I listened to her and in our conversations where she didn't mention how much she worked and how hard she worked and all the things she worked with, either in corporate America or as a tradwife, and doing what she does. She, when I was calling her for an interview, I was like, what time do you want to, interview? She was like, anytime, just not 7 a.m. because I'm milking all the cows, but any other time. And it was very much the implication that they're like, 6 a.m. is fine. I'll be up at 6 a.m. too. So that's Courtney just likes to work. I think Courtney is a workaholic.
Did you talk at 6 a.m.?
Hell no. We talk mid-morning like a normal person. But I very much get the impression that she is one of those people who's going to work like her ass off at any job she goes to. So like this is her job, and she very much views it as a job, which I think is different setup than when you watch something like Ballerina Farm, where like it's a job, duh, what she's doing, but she makes it seem so easy and effortless, and does not present this as like, nah, man, like you're going to work just as hard, if not harder, than your corporate America job here doing Tradwives.
Simple question.
So
is Courtney married?
She is. Okay. She does not have the Tradwife aesthetic at all. She is very much, farmer gear. She looks like
handles her shit.
Yeah, I want to say dirty farmer, but I don't mean that dirty in like a moral way. I just mean like she's
Dusty.
covered in dirt. She goes out and works in farms and fields, and she loves it, right? And so she would not intersect with any of these brands of tradwife in 100%. I think she's got a little bit of the religious element in it, in terms of believing in the authority structures, God, Jesus, husband, wife, in terms of how things in that hierarchy work. But she was not very fundamentalist in her beliefs, where it's like everybody needs to think that. She was very libertarian and said like, this is my choice. This is what I want. I think it's the right choice. I'm happy to talk to anybody about it, but you need to make your own choice, and the government needs to get out of our way. So she intersects with the religion in that aspect of it. And she intersects in the like homesteading aspect of it, like Ballerina Farm, in terms of the type of lifestyle she likes to live. She likes to live a very self-sufficient homesteading, you have everything you need lifestyle that way. So I put this in here to complicate this idea that even these tradwives will slot in nicely siloed to different, to these different archetypes. This is, like I've been saying, an active conversation that is going on like what a tradwife is. And it's obviously going to converge into something eventually. And who knows what that's going to be. But what is definitely going to be in all of that is a very patriarchal structure. And it's going to seem very attractive, and also the idea that feminism needs to be abandoned and women need to be called back to the home.
Are you hopeful?
I don't know. Because there's a level in which this is not bad. This is not harmful to want to choose this life. In fact, I feel like it's actually a very feminist idea that like you can choose the life you want. And there's a thing on the left where like our personal flavor of like misogyny or anti-feminism is that like a woman can hold any thought or opinion she wants as long as it's a liberal idea. If it's a far right idea, well then fuck them. And I think of Tomi Lahren here. I don't know if you know who Tomi Lahren is, who's like, she's a blonde bombshell, like very conservative MAGA reporter who is like an elder millennial like us. So she came up like 10 years ago or so, but she has very, very, very right-wing views. And I always would feel like the left's reaction to her, it would always be like, fuck that Tomi Lahren bitch. She can't think what she thinks. And you're like, whoa, we went way past. Like feminism means that some feminists are going to be right wing. Like you can call Tomi Lahren has dumb opinions. You can say that she is wrong in her opinions, but she's allowed to have her opinions. So some level of that logic I feel like applies here, where it's like, hey, just because women want to return to a traditional lifestyle and live that way, it's not a threat to liberal feminism. In fact, it is also like something liberal feminism directly does espouse to be about, right? Is about choice. So you can choose this certain way. Where I and I think people should object to it is at the point where like the fundamentalists are wanting to take it, which is like, my religion tells me that this is the right choice. Therefore, you also need to make this choice. I feel like that's the line, right? And there are certain elements of Tradwifery and of MAGA and of the red pill that think that way because they think in those hierarchies and in that authoritarian structure. And if they're ever able to like fully take hold, like I said with a fundamentalist, one of the concepts is that the pressure to maintain that system is going to be put on the submissives of the system, whether that's people of color, whether that's liberals, whether that's any type of outgroup in fundamentalist Christianity, are going to have to bear the responsibility for the success of the system rather than the people in power. And it's interesting that they are using a twisted reading of feminism to justify getting us back into that authoritarian system.
Would you like to hear my ice cream flavors?
Yes, I would. Please.
All right. So category 1 was the Christian fundamentalism, and that is vanilla with chunks of shrapnel.
Okay.
The second one was the ballerina farm aesthetic, the entrepreneur. And that was strawberry laced with Percocet. And
I'd eat that.
Yeah, I mean, that sounds pretty good.
That sounds pretty good, yeah.
The third one was the borderline hot, scary revolving door between domestic videos and OnlyFans. So that one was a quite ample pint of hot fudge. And then there's a secret fourth category because you brought up Courtney and the ones who are just tradwives on the street, I think you called it, and tradwives helping other tradwives. And that one doesn't sound so bad. It sounds actually quite healthy in some ways. So
no, that one sounds the best. Yeah.
Yeah. So this is that category 4 is going to be a really, really tasty bunch of cotton candy grapes.
Okay. I can get on board with those. The shrapnel one will be hard to sell merch for because obviously these are going to be sold.
It's our bone
as
broth.
merch.
It's our bone broth.
Yeah, exactly. So we have to figure out what the shrapnel is. It could be like, peppermint or something like that.
No, peppermint's good though.
Pepper.
I would eat that.
Well, if people are going to buy it, it has to be good.
Are we trying to make this into a? Are we making a market right now?
Yeah, I'm thinking about revenue streams here, dude.
All right. Well, if I knew that I had to have practical flavors, then we're going to have to figure out the Percocet prescription. We're gonna have to find out how to get shrapnel.
It could be an
in there.
allegory. The Percocet can be like, whatever.
That could be peppermint.
Nerd candies.
That could, I mean, like it could be nerd candies. Sure. So whatever.
I have another section here that I didn't go through, but I think is valuable. I think if we go through it right now, then we might be able to cut it in at some point or something like that.
Do it.
And that's the idea of market labor versus domestic labor and the value that we in society place on each one. Do you know what I mean when I say market labor or domestic labor?
Well, you mentioned the term market labor at the top of this episode, and I almost called you on it to define it. But how I would assume it refers to is market labor refers to the efforts you put in to make a paycheck, and domestic labor are the efforts you do to keep the house running.
Yeah, almost exactly. I defined it as market labor is labor performed for a wage. So just for money, right? And domestic labor is unpaid labor performed in the household to maintain the home and care for its members. And I think the unpaid at the beginning of it is very important because we can look at the domestic type of labor that like Ballerina Farm does, and we can say that doesn't fit the definition of domestic labor because that labor she's getting monetization from, right? So she has found a way to make this what traditionally is domestic labor into market labor, which I think is really cool. But yeah, so just the unpaid work, like someone's got to do the laundry, right? Someone's got to make dinner tonight. Someone's got to do X, Y, and Z. And that's traditionally unpaid. And, in modern times, market labor is seen as more important, is seen as the dominant form of labor, is seen as the good labor. More value is placed on that because that's what brings us money, right? And we can talk about capitalism intersecting at this point or whatever, but like traditionally that labor is male, and traditionally that labor, like I said, has been seen as to be more important or better than domestic labor. I don't think we even need to prove that point with any evidence. I think everybody would agree with that, right?
In some ways, that maps to the idea of a male-only space, too, to revisit quickly that idea of pushing women out of the workforce. I mean, if market labor is valued more highly than domestic labor, and there's this movement in some respects to reclaim it as a male space, that's just, something to note.
Oh, yeah, 100%. And, I mean, the hatred of modern feminism comes a little bit from the idea that, feminists gained women access to market labor, right? And one of the things they fight for, especially like second wave feminism, is like to get rid of the wage gap, right? And to make sure that women have access to that space and they have access to things like bank accounts and credit cards and that kind of stuff. So like that was the fight back then. And it's led again to like this idea that the market is more important than the domestic, when we all know, at least I do from experience in my life, that just ain't true. If I have a work uniform that I need to wear to work and I bring it home and my partner washes it for me so that I can wear it the next day to go to work, like, yeah, there was no money made by the person who washed my clothes, but I need a clean uniform to go to work to make money. You can't do one without the other. Both are equally as important, but we have a fucked up view of which one is more important than the other. And so I don't want to get prescriptive in this podcast. I haven't, and I never will, but as close as I can get to that, it seems like that's the fucking problem, right? Is that we view one over the other when really they're symbiotic.
There's something in here about capitalism being the big evil,
Yes.
Where it dictates the value system. It dictates what's required of families in order to get by. And it creates destabilization, basically, and insecurity.
Well, and I told you this before, and it's true, that there is a strong vein of anti-capitalism in these Tradwives as well. Like, traditional, like fundamentalist tradwives, like they end up making a lot of their own products and their own soaps and shampoos. And, you know, Tia Levings even says that one of the things she misses about being a tradwife is she got to make her own ketchup. And it's even present with Courtney as well. Like she did all this stuff to get herself out of this go consumer rat race lifestyle, that tradwives are seen as a reaction, as an anti-capitalist movement, as a reaction against it. And Courtney has created a life where like blurs the lines between market labor and domestic labor the way that I've defined them, right? Because the work she's doing on the farm actually is market labor because she's doing that work hoping to get money from that labor. Like there's an equality of that market labor and that domestic labor that is happening in her life that isn't present with other tradwives. And like, in a way, like if all tradwives could be more like her in that way, I feel like a lot of these bad things that are happening in the movement could be mitigated against. And how do we get to that point as a society where those two things are seen as equal, and therefore everybody's choice is seen, it really is a true and fair choice, as opposed to, I keep using the metaphor of a siren song, like being called back into something again that can be really harmful. Because again, the myth of this lifestyle is that the work becomes easier. It does not become easier, right? In fact, it becomes more, and the work never stops, right? There's no retirement in this lifestyle. You don't get to, at 65, get a retirement with a pension or a 401k. No, when you're older as a tradwife, you're still taking care of the children. It's just your children's children. And that is your role and your expectation. So when you decide to submit into this lifestyle, there is no getting out of it. And there is no money that you get. So you could be financially dominated in these spaces. You can't leave because you don't have any fucking money to leave. Right. And you have all these children. And so that is taking up your time, and you don't have any time for yourself, like Ballerina Farm, right? She's losing pieces of herself. And she has sacrificed herself to be just this vessel that gives to other people and supports other people. And that's fine if that's her choice. But you don't really get that impression from watching their fucking TikToks.
The real big thing that I would say is the doom and gloom danger of believing you're getting into this tradwifery, as you called it, thinking it's going to be a relief and a easier lifestyle, is the giving up of your own personhood and submitting without true understanding of what that might entail, true understanding of shared values and communication. If it's expected that if needs change, if wants change, you can't communicate them after making that initial decision, then that's no different than basically Britney Spears. You know, it's a difference between Britney and Kim Kardashian. It's like, do you have agency over the choices you're making, or are you a ward of somebody else making your decisions for you?
Yeah, and well, and that's where the red pill intersects, because I mean the red pill really is about taking agency away from women, right? Noting that the problem in society started when women started having agency. The tradwives are interesting because it's more about what happens when you surrender your agency yourself, right? There's a real good spot that the patriarchy wants women to be in, and that's the spot where women are seeing the giving up of their agency as empowering themselves. And so like it really works out well if like what the woman wants is in line with what the patriarchy wants for the woman, and it'll feel like she is doing something good and she's doing something right, and she's being empowered by the choice to submit, when there is loads of evidence and loads of historical precedent to show that's a bait and switch. And like, there's not any counter programming to this. You know what I mean? Like who's out there as a leftist or a more open-minded progressive example of tradwifery to hold up and compare to this? There isn't. The only thing that we can hold up and compare is a freaking burnt out millennial girl boss who is sitting there going, I mean, yeah, this fucking sucks. I have so much work to do. And it's like, that doesn't look appealing either. So if my choice as a young woman is to go with the one that looks like a better lifestyle, well, I'm fucking going to be a trad wife then.
Would you be a trad wife?
1,000%. Absolutely. Absolutely. I'd be a trad wife. I am a domestic god.